Yeah. Is anybody? How about
Doing okay? From drinking that effluent?
is that a yes?
Hey, you know what? Probably knocks out Ebola. Drink that stuff, you know? Or you know, drink that blue water from my place. That kills anything.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for spending the rest of your day with us. Today is Tuesday, October the 14th. This is a regular voting meeting of the Prescott City Council. Jim, introductions?
Sure, Mayor. We got two of our finest in the back. Would you guys please stand up? And this one over here in the corner. Want to thank you guys for everything you do. You know, it's nice to go to bed at night knowing we have people that act and look just like you on the job. You're welcome.
Thanks, guys. Okay, Reverend Merlino from Sacred Heart was to do the invocation. I don't see him here yet, so let's jump right on to the pledge. Councilwoman Wilcox.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Kirkendall.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lamerson.
Here.
Councilman Arnold.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Kuknio.
Here.
Councilman Lazelle.
Present.
Councilwoman Wilcox.
Here.
All present.
Okay, let's, Manager, anything on your side? Okay, let's go to the consent agenda, and we have a request to pull item C until we approve the others, and then we'll go back and talk about it and vote it separate. So, that said, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Mayor, can I just make a comment on one item F?
Sure. You want to pull it off? And
I don't want to pull it off. Just you know, we're spending more money on the airport terminal. It feels like we're pulling it in a black hole. I think we need to get the new terminal figured out and done up sooner. It just gives me heartburn every time we spend money on it.
okay.
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items 1A through 1I, excluding 1C.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Let's vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Now let's go to item C. Craig, you had a question on
I
that.
did, Mayor. Thank you. I guess this would go to Don. I don't think you were here when this went through in 08 and 09, but did we use that information that NAU provided us?
We use it all the time.
You do?
And I was not here in 2008,
Okay.
2009, but
And I noticed, I read it and it said it's available to the public. How's that available to the public? I mean, other than looking up on our website, are we giving that information out to the Chamber of Commerce?
it's widely distributed, and
Okay.
once it's completed, I will have a copy, and anybody who wants a copy can get a copy from me,
Okay.
or from the Office of Tourism, or from NAU.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, and I know it's only $5,000, but only doesn't really cut it anymore, so thank you.
Thank you.
So you have what you
Yes, sir.
need, right? Chris?
Jim, you're in front of me. No? Okay.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, I think this is going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff about what people are doing when they come here, you know, how much they make. You're really going to get a good grasp on all this. On question number 12, it says on a scale of 10, where 1 is low and 10 is high, please indicate your overall satisfaction with your experience in Prescott. It just would be nice if we did get a 1, 2, 3, or 4, if maybe there was a spot on there which would let us know why their experience was good or why their experience was bad. I don't know if they do that, but you know, if we do score low on something here, it would be nice to know what the problem was that they experienced, so maybe we could look into it.
There will be a training program offered by NAU for the different venues participating in this study, and that's one of the things that I think they will be addressing if there are issues, to make sure that we collect that data.
So you guys will do follow-up on that as well?
We will. Well, we'll have to do it at the time that the survey is collected.
Okay, thanks.
Jim?
No, sir, I didn't have a question.
Oh, you didn't have it?
No.
Okay. Okay, do we have a motion to,
Mayor, I'd like to make a
approve
motion
that
to approve item 1C.
Second.
item C?
Yes.
That's, okay. And that's a motion?
Yeah, and Chris seconded it.
Yeah. Motion made and seconded. Let's vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Let's go to the regular agenda, item A.
Item 2A, public hearing and consideration of a Series 12 restaurant liquor license application from Lyndon Karen Kabrick, applicant for Prescott Station Restaurant located at 200 East Gurley Street. Mayor and council, this liquor license application was posted for the required 20 days. It was routed through community development and the police department. No public comments were received and no issues were raised. The application fee has been paid, and the applicant, I believe, is present and available to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? I'm getting organized here.
Is the applicant here?
Yeah, I don't, they said they were gonna be here, I guess I don't see them.
Any questions on the council part on that liquor license transfer? Even though the applicant is not here.
Right.
Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I
Mayor.
move to approve the, I don't have the language.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Sorry, I move to close the
Second.
public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
You do it, Jim?
Yes, it's
Okay.
been,
Did you have a second?
moved and seconded, yes.
Yes. Vote on the motion, please.
Go ahead now, Gene. You want to make the motion?
Passes unanimously.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the liquor license application number 121-33599 for a Series 12 restaurant license for Prescott Station Restaurant located at 200 East Gurley Street.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
They are here, Mayor. Mayor, they are here.
They just showed up.
Oh, they are here. We've already, we almost slipped by without you. Would you like to come down and make a comment or tell us anything? It's your claim to fame for a couple of minutes. And you'll be on television, so.
I didn't know that we were going to be so prompt. It took us a moment to find a place to park. Well, have we approved our license application?
You're golden.
Once that lights up, it'll be done.
Ah, I see. So I should talk kindly about town council in the city that we love.
You can.
We have now moved here. We're residents of the city of Prescott, and that was part of why we had reapplied for a liquor license. We had become a little smaller, and it's sole proprietorship now. We didn't know at the time that we were going to have to start all over because it was a brand new business, and so we learned the hard way with a reapplication for just about everything that we do. It's still my wife and I. We are now actively operating it again as we have now downsized, and we're very proud not to be afraid of summer anymore. And we're looking to fall and winter, and if you come in anytime for lunch or dinner, you're more than likely to see one or both of us now every single day.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I was just in
We
your
appreciate
place yesterday with the German council from Arizona and the German council from the greater Southwest region, and it was great. Your staff is really well trained. We were having some really intense conversations, and they didn't come interrupt. They just stood there until they were recognized. And the food was fantastic. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We are blessed with a really excellent staff.
You betcha.
Yeah, Chef Dabney is doing a great job.
He is.
Yep. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there noise when people are sitting out on the patio? I've heard of complaints about a little motorcycle noise.
There is a little bit of motorcycle noise. One of the things we're going to be doing in the next couple days, we'll be back down with our temporary permit to plexiglass in the patio, which will help us insulate a little bit of the motorcycle noise.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get them to hold the noise down.
Oh, good luck with that.
Thanks for being here.
You know, it's nice, Mayor. Two big guys in this council had just been at that restaurant recently, so thank you, Charlie and Chris.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Dana, did we vote?
We have a motion. Did we have a second?
And seconded, yeah.
Okay.
So let's vote on the, that would be on the approval.
Passes
correct?
unanimously.
Okay. Okay, you can go back to work now. Before we go to item B, Charlie has a couple of requests here.
Yeah, Mayor, without objection, I'd like to move item F, G, and H forward. Item E is going to, I think, take some time related to the wastewater utility rates. And we've got some folks from the Forest Service here and some folks in the audience for the other items. Figure if we could dispense with those, that would be fantastic.
So we can move F, G, and H and then come back to B.
Yes, sir.
Is that your thought?
If you're all right with that?
Any objection?
Yeah, B is actually the field and facility services trucks.
Right, I'm just proposing to move F, G, and H forward.
Before the
And just,
reclamation thing.
Before B, move them in front of B.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Anybody else? Question? Okay, let's go to item F.
Item
Thank you, Mayor.
2F, approval of one, acceptance of an Arizona Department of Transportation 90% funding grant in the amount of $1,440,000 for design and construction, including rehabilitation and structural upgrade of the apron area used by U.S. Forest Service and large aircraft. 2, authorization of services number 4 for accomplishment of the design by Dibble Engineering in an amount not to exceed $130,882. City contract number 2014-029A4.
Okay, good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council. My name is John Cox. I'm the airport manager here for the City of Prescott. And basically, I want to request acceptance for two issues today. One is an ADOT grant in the amount of $1,440,000 for the design and reconstruction of the apron area that's used by the United States Forest Service, as well as for parking large aircraft, large transient aircraft, and corporate aircraft at a specific area on the airport property. The second item under the same item is authorization of services number 4 for Dibble Engineering for design services in an amount not to exceed $130,882. That was under a city master design contract selection in September of 2013. So this project actually relates to a specific area that's necessary for some rehabilitation that's been identified for quite a few years, adjacent to a taxiway called Delta. You can see on the screen above, our main runway runs right here. Taxiway Delta is actually a parallel full-length taxiway that's here, and the Forest Service property basically extends the 16 acres in here. So a section of the Delta taxiway, as well as a new section of pavement that's going to actually include additional stall, if you will, a parking area and a aircraft loading apron area that will be under construction. So just to identify this area further, this whole lease area was entered into an agreement with the Forest Service and the City of Prescott back in 1989. At the time, Melville Road did not even exist, or this taxiway existed, so there was quite a bit of infrastructure that was necessary in order for this area to even be developed. The Forest Service in the past 25 years has spent an extensive amount of federal funds with resources and labor to fully facilitate the Forest Service. Basically, their main thrust of their operation occurs between May and the fire season in April to August, if you will. The remainder of that time, certainly in the winter months and the spring months, general aviation services can utilize this area, as well as any public, corporate, or transient traffic. So during the 4-month fire season, though, this area is exclusively utilized for the Forest Service of loading the slurry bombers, if you will, in support of any fire suppression efforts throughout the state and beyond. The Prescott Fire Center also is going to be combining some joint funds for improvements of an additional expansion area in the area I've identified here, which will increase the loading bay areas to 3 for a lot more efficient operation for the slurry bombers. So they're investing a total of an additional $1 million in federal funds in order to fund some construction improvements. I would like to recognize a couple of members of the U.S. Forest Service, Jeff Andrews and Dan Salcedo, who's with the Prescott Fire Center here, and they're coordinating with the city of Prescott in regards to their construction portion of this. They have also contracted Dibble Engineering through a separate procurement to do what we consider their portion of the improvements. That's up to $1 million worth of improvements for their continued expansion of the Forest Service facility. This is a project that's been underway for quite some time, but just within the last year, there's been some increased communications regarding the procurement of the design phase and the construction and estimated costs. So within the last year, there's been certainly an elevation in communication and coordination between the city of Prescott and the Forest Service, and it's been a very positive communication and coordination effort. So we would like to continue this effort through approval of the grant agreement with the ADOT as well as the design improvement for Dibble Engineering.
Okay. Steve?
First of all, I'd like to thank the Forest Service for investing in our community and keeping the slurry bomber operation here at Prescott. I think it's essential for our southwest region. Second of all, I just am curious about why $130,000, almost $131,000 of engineering for that upgrade of that parking apron. That seems a little bit expansive to me, is question one. And question two, I would think that based upon you're talking about doing that expansion and part of it going out onto Taxiway Delta would create a serious lip or fracture of asphalt right in the middle of that thing. Why would we not spend a little extra money and take in that portion of Delta Taxiway and make it all new so that the turning movements of those slurry bombers aren't back and forth over old asphalt and new asphalt? Just a question.
Good questions. I'd like to address your second one first, if I may, sir. Taxiway Delta was actually, the Forest Service expended over $100,000 last year just doing some rehabilitation and some repairs to Taxiway Delta for the purpose of their utilization, which is also the benefit of the city. So they did some crack sealing and some overlays in that area to repair any of the cracks that were identified. Because of that repair, it extended the useful life of that pavement surface, so ADOT did not identify that area as a potential, funded improvement necessary under this project.
So operationally, it's not an issue then?
It's certainly not an issue with the city, and I didn't gather that from the Forest Service as well, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure, those tankers are heavy, and for safety and making sure we don't, tear something up the first month that we're using it based upon that seam that's going to be right in the middle of that thing. It just made sense to maybe go all the way over and redo the whole thing. The other question was $130,000. What does that get the city or the Forest Service as far as, are they moving utilities? Are they doing engineering on drainage? Seemingly, we're just replacing and re-engineering the slip area there. Why would we need to spend $130,000 on engineering?
The city's portion of the total project cost is about $1.6 million. So $130,000 is I want to say 8% of the entire construction project cost, if you will. I've actually vetted through that myself. ADOT actually looked at the actual proposal and has approved that. And basically, you're correct. It does entail subsurface. It entails drainage. There's a lot of stuff other than just structural and civil work that include the pavement rehabilitation and repair as well. But it does include a lot of the civil portion of this design.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Charlie.
Mayor, thank you. And mostly reiterating on Steve's comments, Jeff, thanks for being here. The Forest Service clearly is a part this council's identified of the future of our airport, and this is step one. When we start talking about the runway length, I think that'll be step two into the future generation of slurry bombers. I had the same questions about the engineering costs. It seems like a lot, but at the same time, if it's been vetted and ADOT's looked at it, staff's satisfied with it, this is a project that I certainly want to see get done before the end of next spring. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mayor. I was just wondering are we looking towards the future when we're designing these things? You know what? I don't know how long our runway is and how long a DC-10 takes, but I know when they were using those, that lays one heck of a strip of retardant down. It'd be nice to have that here in the future. I don't know what the Forest Service is looking towards that way. Are we building this section to maybe handle that kind of weight, or are we just building to handle what's out there right now?
Any of the larger aircraft that the Forest Service needs for no-kidding emergency services here in Prescott, we can provide a waiver to them. We're very sensitive to the number of operations that are impacted by the pavement. But just to give you an example, you know, the Forest Service contracts with various flight departments, if you will, to have a variety of different aircraft that actually come into service for fire safety needs. The C-130, for example, which is a very common type, it's a triple tandem gear, if you will. So it's kind of like a large marshmallow-like tire that lands on the surface. So if it's not for the weight bearing of the actual aircraft itself, but the tire can absorb, you know, a lot of that weight. Yeah, we do have concerns, obviously, of the weight bearing for the main runway, you know, and the taxiways. This airport is not designed for a C-130 operation consistently, but we can have, you know, sporadic, you know, operations of C-130. And that's part of the fleet. The design fleet for this, for example, is called the BAE 146, which is a little bit smaller. I think the useful maximum weight is around 100,000 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff. And that's fully loaded with fire retardant, and that's something that surface can handle on a periodic basis.
Yeah, and just to describe that more in layman's terms, that's a high-wing 4-engine jet, correct?
Yes,
that
sir.
particular aircraft. And so to respond directly to your question, yes, the scope of the structural design of these aprons, these loading areas and so forth, and the associated areas for parking and transit out to the taxiway and the runway are being designed, upgraded, not just for what we've got now. And my understanding is that we will be seeing some different types of slurry bombers out there. Again, 4-engine jet with a high wing, although it's a relatively small aircraft.
Just thinking that eventually we're going to have to go in there and redo that runway, lengthen that runway, just looking towards the future, because with fighting wildfires is so big up here, and just seeing the payload of that DC-10 was, what, 3 times as much as the other ones we got. I don't know if they'd even want to, I think they're running out of Falcon right now, right? When they send that up?
Phoenix Mesa Gateway, and they have a 10,000-foot long runway. Yeah.
Okay. So
at a lower elevation.
Right.
To be candid, forever's a long time, but we're not going to see anything on the scale of a DC-10 or an MD-11 at Prescott Airport. That is a totally different game, let's say, for that size and that wheel loading of aircraft. The impact on landing is tremendous, just tremendous.
So it'd be a lot more than what we're doing right now.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, I recall back in my engineering days, we were doing pavement designs for that type of wheel loading, and it was not uncommon to have a 12-foot thick structural section to be able to, on the runway, to be able to handle that, that class of aircraft.
Thank you.
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Jeff, thanks for being here today. And thanks for the presentation. I appreciate my fellow council's concerns over how we're using taxpayer money when it comes from either the FAA or ADOT or City of Prescott, etc. It's instrumentally important we keep the slurry bombers available in Prescott, period. And that's just the way it works. We live in the woods, and because of our elevation, it's a better site to have the slurry bombers at than maybe Flagstaff or some other place that might have airflow problems or whatever that means when those planes take off and they're loaded with slurry. So I think this is a good investment of the money. And I think that between the engineers that work for ADOT, the engineers that work for the city, and the engineers that work for the FAA, I think we have a project that is in the best interest of everybody that will be affected by this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? John, I have a couple of questions on Now, the project that the Forest Service is going to do, I understand they're going to add one more loading pad, and it'll be a similar configuration to the turn in and turn out for these. And it'll be west of, it'll take up the space west of our existing.
Correct. Yes, sir. It'll be in this location right here, sir.
Yeah. Now, our rebuild, everything's going to come out, as I understand it, and they're going to beef up the pad, and then go back with blacktop, and the concrete aprons will be 100 by 100 rather than 60 by 60. Now, will their project tie in with ours nose to nose, and is it going to be the same type of configuration? So there will be 3 of those pads in a row instead of the 2 as we're doing now?
Yes, exactly. In the past, when the fire season is here and they're at their peak of operations, they've actually had some aircraft that have had to stage on the taxiway, if you will. With the third loading area, they'll be able to stage 3 aircraft on the actual concrete apron, which has been stressed, for the weight while they're doing the loading. But it also allow aircraft to be staged in right behind each one of them while they're doing the loading themselves. So we can, in essence, have 6 aircraft that are staged off of the active taxiway.
Okay, kind of following up on Steve's question, is taxiway D, is it engineered to take the same loads that the new pads will be able to take?
Unfortunately, not at this time. What we're designing is I want to say a useful weight, a useful life for the larger aircraft that the Forest Service is going to be bringing in as part of their fleet. We will need to offer some allowances for the U.S. Forest Service to utilize those areas, and that's why they saw to it to fund about $100,000 worth of some pavement repairs and some crack sealing and maintenance last year in order to support that. This section that we are actually designing for the improvements in the construction is going to be the design criteria for strengthening both the taxiway and the runways in the future. Unfortunately, it's not stressed for that at this time.
Well, will that lack of quality there impede us from getting the airplanes to the new pads that will be stressed appropriately?
I think it'll decrease the useful life of the pavement surfaces by having a heavier aircraft, but I don't think that it will impede their actual operation during the time when it's of the highest need.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
My other question is, this project would start in June, which is right at the peak of the fire season. And I understand it's going to be staged, but I've been out there a long time, and I saw what it does to the operation of the entire airport. When we had to do the 400-foot extension and retraction, there was times the airport came to a standstill, and I realized that the active is not over here, but it's in the middle of the fire season, and where we depend so much the airport revenue on the flow charge for fuel sales. If we're not able to get the airplanes in here and sell fuel, then it really puts the airport also in another awkward financial position by not having any flow fee, because we don't have any airplanes coming in here to use this facility. So I have a concern about that entire area being down for June, July, August, September. I realize the planning is that we're meeting deadlines, but it sure seems like that it's like closing I-40 in the summer. It's not the appropriate time to do it. One other question on back to the engineering slightly. It seems like 10% seems to be, or staying right at 10% for design and engineering seems to be an accepted practice. And I can understand that on a new construction. But you mentioned drainage has to be redone. I think drainage has been fine. I don't remember ever a problem. with drainage over in that area. And during the off-season, even though we have the ability to use those pads, and I told Craig yesterday, I don't remember ever seeing a heavy aircraft just parked over there. They usually park down at the FBO or wherever they can. And the way the Forest Service, they're fenced, they have good perimeter security all the way around. I'm not sure how people would get back and forth when that's used as a parking ramp to even get to the airplane and get back around. There is no parking except if you parked on Wilkinson Drive along that area when the Forest Service is shut down, or when they're in operation and everything is shut down. So I'm not sure that our agreement to use those pads when they're not operating airplanes has a lot of value. My other question, or another question, is now we're redoing this whole thing to the tune of over $1.5 million, and they're going to spend $1 million. Who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of this total pad in the future? Is that going to remain the city's responsibility?
Mayor, if I may ask, I'll answer your third question first, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The question that you had was basically the maintenance of the improvement that's done. Right now, we're renegotiating with the U.S. Forest Service through their lease department in regards to expanding, the existing lease period for an additional 20 years. And it's not just the $1 million investment that they're doing, but the future investments within the next 20 years that are going to be critical. That will be a component of the lease negotiation, is the maintenance and the improvements of the leased area on the Forest Service lease. In the past lease that was approved back in 1989, that was a condition in the lease that the city and the U.S. Forest Service would jointly share, in any of the reconstruction or any of the rehabilitation or improvements on the pavement services of the Forest Service, solely for the fact to utilize that when we do have some commercial or some other corporate heavies in. The arrangement that we're working on for the leasing agreement, which will be coming before the council within the next, I want to say 6 months before the construction phase of this project, will include that the Forest Service will be responsible for all the pavement maintenance.
Okay. Yeah. And so now make sure I understand it right. Okay. They will be responsible for the maintenance after this project is done?
That's what I will negotiate in the lease, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had one other question, and it slipped. The property to the west of the fuel tanks are on, is that a separate lease with Legend, where the fuel tanks are located, just west of the Forest Service?
Yes, sir.
That's a separate lease?
Yes, sir.
And there's 17 acres of city-owned property between that lease and the hangars. Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we anticipate anything in the future? Because it's going to be very difficult if the Forest Service needed additional land. It's going to be very difficult to go to the northeast. Do you see any need of any of that 17 acres that should be talked about with the Forest Service at this time for if they have long-term expansion needs?
That's a very good question. Currently, in the 20-year master plan, it does identify a few buildings to be installed there, potentially a firefighting station, potentially air traffic control tower, potentially even a thought of a terminal. But there's no solid, there's no lease agreement, nothing that's actually committing that property specifically for the purpose.
Okay. Because that's about what we have left on the south side for future city needs, if we had opportunities. So, but at the same token, I agree that the Forest Service is important enough to the city that they should be certainly considered for long-term needs, and we should keep that in mind. This being not a co-venture, but at least the timing the same for the Forest Service and us. I went over the contract pretty well on the engineering, but without having the advantage of having the Forest Service contract to lay side beside it when the same engineering firm is doing both jobs. Are you confident that there's no intermingling of responsibilities, or particularly financial, if we are paying for travel, for an example, from Phoenix to Prescott, and both jobs are being done at the same time but under two contracts? You're comfortable that the city's best interests are being managed?
Yes, sir. And initially, the conversation was to have a joint design venture, if you will, in conjunction with the Forest Service. The Forest Service, due to their procurement requirements, needed to have a separate contract, if you will, for the design engineering. So originally the scope that we had presented to Dibble was jointly from the Forest Service and the City of Prescott to Dibble, and they were working on a scope for the all-encompassing project. It was after that time when the Forest Service had to procure through a different procurement for the engineering services that we divided, if you will, the design phases for what the Forest Service is responsible for versus what the City of Prescott is responsible for. So we were both able to review those contracts to make sure that there wasn't any overlapping, and we do know that we're still going to have economies of scale by when Dibble actually does need to have a coordination meeting. Both the Forest Service and the City of Prescott will be there, and Dibble will be up, and they'll split, their fees, if you will, between both of those entities.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and this yet has to be built, and so there will be a construction contract that will come along behind it. What if they have to be bid separate, these jobs do? What if they happen to go to two different contractors? And what would that do with our timing and be closed down for the summer?
And again, the construction phase of this was in coordination with the Forest Service. They are the ones that requested that we have this construction period at this time. So that's why we're actually fast-tracking this, and I do appreciate the City Council reviewing this issue at the council meeting today. Our hope, again, is through some other procurement avenues that the Forest Service may consider to, again, utilize both the funds from the city and the Forest Service funds to have one construction project, if you will. If that does not happen and we actually have to have it into two separate construction projects, we're going to let I want to say, common procurement dictate, and we would think that the contractors, again, economies of scale, they would be very motivated to obtain both of those contracts in the same location. However, if they don't, there could be some consideration in the future whether or not we're going to pursue or continue to approve the construction phase.
Okay. One last question. We're assuming, because the state has already told us how much money that they're going to have available, we're assuming the construction phase of this will come in under that $1,440,000, and there's a couple $100,000 more of construction engineering that has to be paid out of the next phase. What happens if the bids are higher than that?
We could petition to ADOT for a potential revision to the grant. If there's funds available, they may consider that based upon the bids and the construction, the complexity of the project, or we can reject the bids if they're all too high. So that's another challenge, obviously, that during the design phase they want to make sure that they're designing this and do some cost estimating for the construction phase so that they can make sure that they're within what our goal is. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Mayor.
Jim?
Thank you. question. I don't know if it's appropriate for you or appropriate for the Forest Service after your last couple of comments. To the mayor's original concern with regards to the time frame, is there any mechanism in place that we could expedite the construction to 3 months earlier than what's being proposed to avoid the majority of the fire season that we seem to go through every year here in this area? I mean, is there some way that instead of starting in June, we couldn't start in March?
Just due to the normal procurements, again, vetting through the design phase, we hope to have the design phase, and we've scheduled that with Dibble and an expedited design phase of 3 months, which is basically taking us into February. We do know that by the time we actually do the construction procurement, the bid bonds, you know, there's normally a 60-day period in which we can actually, from once the bid opening occurs to once we can actually get the city council approval, action items, and some other, I want to say, insurance requirements necessary in order to start the project. Issue them a notice to proceed. Again, in coordination with the U.S. Forest Service, there's 2 pads that are existing right now, if you will, and part of the design challenge and what the Forest Service has requested is that even during the peak fire season, we're going to maintain to have 2 pads open. So the first phase of the construction is to build the first pad, if you will, and keep at least 2 pads open. So they'll build the first pad, they can demo 1 pad in the construction period, and then do that improvement before they move on to the next one.
Well, thank you for explaining that.
Yes,
you know, that was a long way of saying no. But on the other hand, I think it's important for the public to hear that during fire season, the airport's not going to be shut down. We're still going to have slurry bomber capability. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
It just like one last thing. It seems that the Forest Service is here to make comments, and if some of those things aren't correct, they'd be up talking about it. And I'm quite sure that this thing's been vetted at the biggest level to keep that very thing from not happening and affecting our slurry bomber operations. So thank you for your participation, Jeff. Thank you. Go watch a Cardinals football game, and we'll move forward.
Yeah. If there's comments, we would welcome you to come forward. Okay. Do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mayor, move to accept ADOT grant number E5S2A in the amount of $1,440,000 and approve authorization of services number 4 under city contract number 2014-029 with Dibble Engineering in the amount not to exceed $130,882.
Second.
John, okay. 2 of them, 1. Okay. Do we have a vote? Okay.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
So now we'll move to G. Charlie?
Yes, sir.
Want to go there? Okay.
Item 2G, adoption of ordinance number 4912-1450, rezoning from city single-family SF12 to multifamily MF-M, I'm sorry, RZ14-002, parts of lots 863 through 868, The Ranch at Prescott, Unit 8, owner, Bullwhacker Associates, APNs 103-44-129, 103-44130, 103-44-131, 103-44132, 103-44133, and 103-44134. Ordinance number 4912-1450, an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending the zoning of certain property within the City of Prescott, generally located at Wild Rose Meadow and Morning Glow Way, from single-family 12 zoning district to multifamily medium zoning district.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Item H is actually very closely associated with this rezoning request, so staff comments will also present that briefly here. I'd orient you to the location of the subject property. This is Sears, Gateway Loop, Gateway Mall or Loop Boulevard, and then South Lee Boulevard. And the rezoning of approximately 2.7 acres from single-family 12 to multifamily medium is to includes a portion of the Ranch Unit 8, this being the Ranch Unit 8. And the idea is to rezone the 2.7 acres. It actually, these 3 lots here and a portion of these 3 lots. And once rezoned, that property would be combined with the unsubdivided property to the north. The item H is the revision of plat, which reflects the new boundaries of Unit 8 after that portion. Again, shown that to be rezoned is this portion, the dark portion here. Also part of the revision of plat is the creation of a 68-foot right-of-way through this lot here, and that would ultimately connect to the curb cut in the roadway already existing on Gateway Boulevard. With that, make you aware that the commission considered both of these items at their September 11th meeting and have unanimously recommended approval of both. And Scott Lee is here today to answer any questions that you may have about the proposals.
Council?
Tom, I just assume from the photos that are in the packet that that's representative of the current condition. There's only vacant lots surrounding the proposed area.
That's correct. Staff's understanding is that none of the lots in Unit 8 have sold. It was platted originally in 1999, final platted in 2007. But as you can see, just draw your attention to this current zoning literally splits the ranch house in half. So in part that corrects that situation.
Okay. Anyone else?
One question. What does that do, if anything, to the water allotment on the original plat?
Well, because of the preliminary plat was approved I believe it was a pre-98 plat.
Right.
It's a groundwater allocation, so really nothing is done with respect to the books.
Okay, so nothing changes.
If and when a multifamily project comes in for the large unsubdivided tract to the north, then the city water allocation committee and city council would have to weigh in on the allocation of water for that.
But the plat that we're seeing up here now already has a water allocation pre-1999.
Yeah. And the key word there is subdivisions.
Right.
You know, pre-98 plats, there has to be a plat.
Right.
An unplatted, unsubdivided plat does not have a water allocation, grandfathered water allocation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Do you have a motion on item G?
Mayor, I recommend to move to adopt ordinance number 4912-1450.
I'll second that just before I do it. I'd see if there was any comments from the public.
We'll go there.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? I second the motion.
Okay. Let's vote.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, let's go to item H.
Item 2H, replat of the ranch at Prescott, Unit 8, RP 14-003, removing all or a portion of lots 863, 864, 865, 866, 867, 868, revising the plat of lots 860, 861, 862, 863, 864, 865, and creating a new 68-foot wide street right-of-way, owners Bill Walker Associates.
Okay.
Nothing to add, Mayor. That I have on the overhead screen, this would be Unit 8 after the property were removed and the revision of plat, and you can see this is the portion that was just rezoned, and ultimately the subdivision boundaries lose 3 portions of those 3 lots and these 3 lots, and then 1 lot. So 4 lots less than what was final platted in 2007.
So, moving some lines.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions, council? Public, any questions? Okay, need a motion for item H.
Mayor, I move to approve RP 14-003, a revision of the ranch unit number 8.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, vote please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Now we'll move back to item B. Any
Item-
questions, any problem?
Item 2B, approval of purchase of 2 each 2015 Ford F-550 regular cab 4x4 2-ton pickup trucks, including aftermarket outfitting from Peoria Ford, using State of Arizona contract ADSP 014-063237, pricing in the total amount of $167,636.72.
Mayor and Council, good afternoon. The Street Maintenance Division, working in conjunction with the Fleet Services Division, replaces aging vehicles used in street maintenance operations, which are at or approaching 100,000 miles, have reached the end of their useful lives, or are becoming mechanically unreliable. The Streets Division utilizes pickups for hauling materials to and from work sites, also for snow plowing and for transporting equipment when they have to haul a trailer. The Streets Division is planning to replace the existing 1.5-ton pickup trucks with heavier-duty 2-ton pickup trucks in order to increase efficiencies and to allow for safer operations. The existing pickups, when they're fully loaded with a snowplow, a spreader, and cinder mix, are very near their gross vehicle weight limits. And in order to avoid being overweight, streets crews have to purposely underload the trucks when they're going out on jobs, especially during snow plowing season. Additionally, it is possible for the trucks to exceed their weight limit when they're just carrying heavy debris on normal jobs that they may be out in the field doing, debris such as mud and rocks if there's been a rainstorm. If a vehicle were to be overloaded, the brakes and the hydraulics would be forced to perform outside of their design capacities, possibly becoming unsafe. Streets crews must remain mindful at times of the weight limit and make extra trips back to this transfer station to ensure that they're properly loading the trucks and avoid the potential safety hazards of being overweight. We're requesting replacement of 2 of 6 trucks that we have currently in the Streets Division. These units don't meet the 100,000 mile criteria, but they do have high repair costs, and which reflect the sustained operations that limits beyond the capabilities of the equipment, and that justifies the replacement of the trucks. Fleet Services will look to identify repurposing the trucks that we want to take out of service before we would request permission to surplus these vehicles. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We have funding of $168,000 budgeted in fiscal year 15 for replacement of these 2 trucks.
Okay, Charlie?
Mayor, thank you. And Stephanie, thanks for your patience in waiting. The Forest Service thing went a little longer than I thought it would.
No problem, Councilman.
I want to thank you and Roy for taking the time today to sit down and take a look at the service records and walk me through the issues that you all are facing with these 2 vehicles that you're looking to replace. And I think the easiest way to describe it is that you want to put a more effective vehicle in this operation and look for a place to put these that makes more sense.
Yes, Councilman. Essentially, the way the city manager put it, we're using a 1-ton truck to do a 2-ton truck's job. So we will look within the city to repurpose the trucks we're taking out of service.
And, obviously one of the things that jumps to mind when we're looking at, $43,000 of repair costs on a 2003 vehicle. But in looking at that with you all, it was really focused a lot on repairs related to the snowplow operations and the spreader unit.
Yes, Councilman, that's true, and lots of breaks.
So certainly I think you'll probably find a willing department that'll take these trucks from you. Again, the explanation that you all provided today makes it easier for me to vote yes on this. In addition, of course, everyone's going to look at the price of the overall unit, but we're getting everything, a new spreader, the snowplow package, and all the things that go along with it.
Yes, Councilman, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Greg?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, this is an upgraded vehicle. Is this 550 going to be retired at 100,000 miles also?
Councilman, more than likely, no. That's our general replacement guidelines. Whenever we look at replacing vehicles, we look across the board at the vehicle, not just the replacement criteria. And since it's a diesel engine and it'll go more than 100,000 miles, this will be in the fleet a lot longer.
Okay. And do these vehicles have any other use other than snow?
Yes, the Streets uses these in their day-to-day operations. They're not in use every single day, but when they have projects that they need these trucks for, they use them. And we also are really good within the city of sharing our assets with other departments. So if Recreation Services needs a truck or utilities, if they need a truck, we also loan our equipment across the lines.
Okay. And tag on to what Charlie was saying, $43,000 worth of repairs, is that an in-house cost for our motor pool, or is that external cost or a combination of both?
It would be a combination of both, Councilman. I don't have the exact
Okay.
breakdown.
Chris?
Yeah, Mayor, this threw a lot of red flags for me too when I was reading it. And after speaking with Stephanie, it got a lot of the questions answered, because when you see something that is 10 years old, but it only has 64,000 miles on it, makes you wonder why we're buying new ones, and the repair costs seem very high. But we're not getting rid of these trucks. We're going to hopefully repurpose these, because the ones that we had weren't doing the job adequately. We're going to get some trucks that seem like they're pretty beefy that'll last us. And knowing that the repair costs, when I saw that we spent $44,000 to repair a Ford F-350, I mean, I knew we had trouble with Fords, but that just seemed like kind of extreme. I'm comfortable with the deal now, and I think it's going to be a good thing for the city.
Anyone else?
And Chris, even though I didn't find this on the road dead, it had to do a lot with, one of these was like a $3,000 snowplow repair after something happened there and they had to replace the hydraulic system and the blade on it.
Well, when I saw this, the first thing I thought was that it was fixed or repaired daily.
Okay, I need to object. I drive a Ford.
I don't have a question on this, but John, I was in Phoenix at a meeting with some of the other mayors last week, and the mayor from Havasu City tells me that they have a provision in place that they give a 2% advantage to local bidders, and that has to do with the sales tax. Do we have that same opportunity?
Well, we don't have that currently in place. On the purchase of taxable goods, some cities have adopted as part of their code, essentially, that local preference, I guess is the way to describe it. However, that taxed local preference 2% is being challenged. So I think it's the Tucson, city of Tucson, local preference is being challenged. So right now, until that sort of winds its way through the courts and the courts either uphold it or not, there's always a risk that it could get overturned at some point.
They had just ordered last week 6 new patrol cars, and I forget what it amounted to, but it was considerable, and it allowed the local dealer to win the bid. So it's something I think we need to track, and if it holds out to be legal, it would certainly be our advantage to keep the business at home. So, and the upfitting, that can still be done by the same people. That's just a contract of its own. So something we can follow up on. Okay, do we have a motion on this item? Any comments from the public? Okay, do you have a motion?
Mayor, move to approve the purchase of 2 each 2015 Ford F-550 regular cab 4x4 2-ton pickup trucks, including aftermarket outfitting from Peoria Ford using State of Arizona contract ADSPO 14-063237, pricing in the total amount of $167,636.72.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item C.
Item 2C, approval of a professional services agreement with Kelly Wise Engineering Incorporated for the Pleasant Street Water Main and Sewer Main Replacement Project in an amount not to exceed $27,043, city contract number 2015-050, Water and Wastewater Funds.
Good afternoon, Joel.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As a staff report indicates, this item's to approve a professional service agreement for Pleasant Street Water Main and Sewer Main Replacement Project. It's part of an ongoing program to replace deteriorated and undersized water mains and wastewater main lines. Project limits are from Carlton to Aubrey, as shown on the vicinity map that's within the the staff report. The city annually budgets funds for replacements and upgrades to small water mains and sewer mains. These mains are typically 3 inches in diameter or smaller, often constructed of galvanized steel, and are a source of leaks. The replacement of these lines helps improve the water system for our residents, increases fire flows, and helps reduce maintenance costs and water loss. City personnel have found evidence of utility construction in the South Pleasant area dating back to the early 1900s. The current water main is 2-inch galvanized. Galvanized piping is not the material of choice anymore. It rusts. It usually has buildup on the piping, which causes both water pressure and water quality concerns, and eventually pipe failure.
That's had good taste.
I brought a picture of the pipe that we've excavated recently, and it's quite shocking. You can tell it's fairly corroded, deteriorated, and this particular section of pipe has been repaired by utilities operations numerous times within the recent past. It's no longer efficiently maintained and needs to be replaced. It's outlived its service life. The new water pipe will be designed through this contract to meet current standards for capacity as well as material. While we are looking at designing this water main, we always keep our eye out for other utilities in the area, and taking a look at our sewer main, we have an area that's in disrepair and needs to be replaced as well. So this design contract will take all of the water main between Aubrey and Carlton and one segment between Aubrey and Carlton for the sewer. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Fort Gregg, we didn't have all the tools in the toolbox we have today. We didn't have the models we have in place today, whether it be on the roads, whether it be on the sewer system, whether it be on the water system. But today we have a different set of tools in the toolbox. And one of the things I've been kind of cantankerous about over the last 10 to 12 years is the failing infrastructure in the city of Prescott. Is there any projection of time that we're going to be able to relate to the citizens of Prescott that we've caught up 80 years of neglect is a good word, to where things are up to date, things are okay. We're only 3 and 4 years out now instead of 100.
I think the city is always going to have needs to replace infrastructure, to brace aging infrastructure or infrastructure that hasn't been properly constructed. But to take a guess at your question, I think in 20 years or so we'll be to the point where the majority of the rehabilitation, reconstruction work is over, and we can fall back more into just a maintenance mode.
I understand, Joel, that and I agree with you that we're always going to have to maintain our streets. We're always going to have to maintain our water pipes and our sewer pipes. There's just things that flush down that corrode pipe, and there's just things that drive on top that wear out the roads, et cetera, et cetera. The point still remains, is there a point in time that we're going to be able to share with the public that we're no longer 100 years out? You know, last time we got into a huge major reconstruction project, we were dealing with sewer and water lines downtown Prescott, the heart of everybody's hometown, that were well over 100 years old. And we saw the consequences just a couple of years ago when we had a big crevice in the middle of Gurley Street going up the hill that closed everything down for a while. And then here not too long ago, we had another big crevice down where they paint that shamrock every year. When, as a councilman, am I going to be able to share with the people that pay the tax dollars that we're in better shape than we were, you know, back in 1900?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Henry Hash. Good question, Councilman. We do agree with you. So one of the plans we have for this year, for this upcoming budget, this is going to be a major plan, a major discussion for us, exactly what you just stated. 100 years is a long time, 90 years is a long time. To be honest, we cannot really have a program to replace our lines every 20, 30 years, but I believe for our city, having a program to replace them every 50 years is reasonable, not longer, and that is what we're going to discuss in the budget discussion. Bring it to you for your information review and see how much money we require, and then we look for your direction to do it. So that would give you the opportunity to really tell our citizens what is our plan. I think their mind would be at ease. It's more 50, not 100, not 90, not 110.
Thank you, Henry. You know, with all the new materials and such that are available, it's logical to perceive that, yeah, you're not going to have the rust issues like we've had in the past. And, you know, we just, under Mr. McConnell's leadership, we just put in a sidewalk improvement here the last couple of years, too. And it's made a huge difference in some of the neighborhoods. And I think some of this stuff, I think the public needs to hear that we're doing good things instead of just all the bad things all the time that you see in the press. There are things that we are doing that are accomplishing the goals and the missions of the statement from the councils, from the policymakers, of having a first-class utilities department, first-class streets, first-class this, first-class that. So the more times we share that information with the public, the better they're going to feel about the way we're doing our job.
Thank you.
Steve?
Joel, in the past, we've had sewer issues from backflow valves that weren't installed, and we've held that to be the responsibility of the property owner. Within this contract, I see we're replacing backflow valves, 5 new sewer services with backflow valves. Is the city going to bear that cost? And if they are, why are we using 2 different standards?
When the city goes and performs a capital improvement project, and we are extending service lines to the property line and actually doing work on the property itself, we pull a building permit on behalf of that property owner to perform that work on their property. So when a building permit is pulled, the requirement is triggered to install a backwater valve. So that's why on this capital improvement project, not all of them, but on this one, backwater valves are being installed as part of the project.
Should that not be a policy of the department to do that every time that there's repairs being made? In other words, you say this time it's being done, but it leads me to believe not all the time is that being done. And we've had huge issues with our aging infrastructure, as Mr. Lamerson would put it, requiring people, and we're not sure we have a grip on it in the city of Prescott, which we should make another push to our community. If they don't have backflow preventers, that the city of Prescott should probably be in concert with that homeowner to split the cost to make sure those are put into place. And I'm just was amazed that we're requiring homeowners from one point in time to do their own, but yet when we're in there working on the road, we're putting them in at free of charge to some homeowners. It just doesn't seem like it's a fair playing field, but I understand it. And I'd like to see in the future, knowing that we haven't changed anything other than we've got a lot more backflow valves in, is to put a push in this coming spring somehow or another in the water bills or whatever, a new plan to make sure that happens so that we are not in harm's way when it comes to lawsuits with backflow preventers that aren't in place. So thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Charlie?
Mayor, thank you. Joel, on what's the plan once the trenches are filled? Are we just going to patch the asphalt?
What we've talked about at Public Works is it'll just be a trench cut. We'll patch it back with our standard detail T-top replacement. So there will be trench lines up the road until we can get to it in Public Works in our next fiscal year pavement, not reconstruction, preservation project. We'll go back and apply a chip seal or some type of wear surface over the top of the trench to get rid of those trench lines and make it back to a smooth ride again.
Okay, so the plan is that probably in the next fiscal year, some sort of a treatment. Because I'm looking at the street, and you know, for the most part, I've driven that street. There's only a couple bad sections in it. So, perfect. Thank you.
Jane?
Joel, I understand that our water and wastewater system is pretty well inventoried, and we have a pretty good handle on where the problems are. Is that a good assumption?
We do have a very good inventory where our assets are, and as far as age, material, those types of thing. Condition in the wastewater system is always an evolving thing as conditions change over time. Generally speaking, though, we have a very good grip on it.
Well, I'm curious as to how this particular area rose to the surface of a priority and how you determine priorities for reconstructing, replacing.
Great question. We use exactly what I spoke about earlier. Our inventory of pipes, and we've given a presentation in the past on that software where we can go and track down exactly how much maintenance has been performed on any piece of pipe within the system or any segment in between houses. And this one has risen to the top of priority based just on that. We go back into our records and see that we've had crews out there X number of times, and it's occurring over a short period of time. So the amount of time and money we're spending on replacing it, or excuse me, not replacing, but repairing it, the money could be better spent replacing it. So we use history of maintenance activities that have occurred.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, Joe, it seems like on infrastructure, it's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, right? Once you get done on one side, you're painting the other side again. And but this stuff, this is what we do to make ourselves environmental. And when we have the red clay pipes out there still handling the sewer, and we replace that with the newer stuff, when we get pipes that aren't going to burst and leak water, I mean, I've seen some places around town where it's actually perking up through the street and stuff. So, I mean, this is an urgent need. This is stuff we need to get on, and I think it's an important thing for us to go forward with. And I know I'm speaking really more towards probably a discussion coming up later today, but infrastructure is what we do as a city. This is what we need to concentrate on.
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment with regards to Councilman Blair's questions. City leads by example. At one time, the codes didn't require a backflow valve. For new construction today, there's different requirements in the adopted codes of today than there was of yesteryear. And that's one of the reasons why we're subject to doing things a little bit differently in 2014 than what was done in 1952 or 1909. So just share that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Craig, maybe you'd be better to handle this one. The rate study that we're looking at today and last week and the future kind of used our 5-year capital plan as a guide for the money that we need to keep that plan in place. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct in terms of a multi-year period. And you recall that addressing the issue of city infrastructure existing and future began with the state-mandated impact fee study. And in that state-mandated impact fee study, there was a meticulous sorting of projects into 2 categories. Number one, those projects which are driven, capacity projects driven by new growth, and that the cost of those was built into the impact fees which were adopted. The other part, which is to repair, to rehabilitate, or to correct existing deficiencies, is built into the multi-year capital improvement program, which underlies, if you will, the rate study.
Okay. Now, following up on Henry's comment, if we do an more extensive study looking at some of this, will that change possibly? We're looking at 5 years, am I correct? 5 or 6 years?
5, yeah. The rate study looks at a 5-year snapshot.
Yeah. Will we be lost in the shuffle if the survey that comes in finds more things that need to be fixed or replaced? Will we be caught kind of in the shortfall of not having planned for enough the rate in the rate study?
No, I believe that what you have, whether it's in the impact fee program, the capacity program, or the existing deficiencies and rehabilitation, my belief is that each of those is a balanced program. We're a city of 40,000. We're not a city of 1 million or 4 million. We have a capacity. We have a capacity to do projects. We have a summer tourist season, and as you all know, that during those summer months, sometimes it seems like every street in the city is ripped up. So there are only so many projects you can do. There are only so many projects that we can actually administer and implement. We do have a very aggressive capital improvement program. I don't think that we will fall behind the curve if, in fact, we find out some things that we need to jump on right now. We have the flexibility in a multi-year program to accelerate some projects and defer other ones, which, though still needed within the 5-year period, may fall in year 2 or 3 instead of, 1 or 2.
Okay, so we're okay.
Yes.
Anyone else? Public? Dan, you've almost been inconspicuous.
Right. Well, I had to come up and say something. My name's Daniel Matson. I live over on Merritt Street. I had a couple questions. You had said something about we use different materials now. I was wondering, what are the different materials? You had said we use galvanized pipe for the water mains. What do we use now? How does it compare cost-wise and lifespan size? And are you increasing the sizes of the pipes? We have better capacity?
Yeah, I'll start with the last question first. We are increasing the pipe size, so going from a 2-inch up to a 6-inch. And as I believe one of the council members mentioned, we now have water models that can help us drive which side it needs to be, and sewer models, but water models to help drive what size the pipe needs to be to meet the fire flow requirements that our fire department needs. Materials, galvanized is what the picture I showed you was, and that's what the pipe currently is out in the street. We in the city now use ductile iron pipe and or a PVC pipe. Much longer lifespan on those. Those are for the mains. For the services, we use copper most often. As far as price goes, there's volatility obviously in the prices. PVC tends to be a little bit cheaper than ductile, but ductile we found up in our region performs really well, especially in the water system. Life expectancy, yeah, it is much better out of a PVC, provided it's constructed properly, and or ductile iron pipe, very good life expectancy.
And with respect to ductile iron versus PVC in the larger pipes, we have seen actually some pretty serious conditions where the PVC pipe has not been placed in the trench properly, and in rocky areas, then what happens over a number of years is that pipe splits, and we've seen some of that in this area. So the ductile iron we've found, as Joel has said, to be a very good investment for this area, considering what's in the ground, the rocks and things like that.
Okay. I guess coming back to my original question, using this long-range plan, in the interim along the way, if we have to do more maintenance, then probably we would do less rehabilitation or replacement. Is that a...
Well, I think that what we're talking about is capital projects. We're talking about pipe replacements primarily. So if that pipe replacement is necessitated by undue maintenance, it's still a replacement. If it's a rehabilitation issue, it's still replacement. If it's a capacity issue, it's still replacement. It's all replacement.
Okay. Okay, do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve a professional services agreement with Kelly Wise Engineering Incorporated for the Pleasant Street Water Main and Sewer Main Replacement Project in an amount not to exceed $27,043, city contract number 2015-050.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Item D.
Item 2D, award of bid and contract for water line stops and 14-inch water line valve installations, Willow Creek Water Line Repair and Scour Protection Project to Arizona Tap Master Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $92,780, city contract number 2015-053, fiscal year water fund.
Thank you. The city of Prescott has the need to replace water transmission mains that cross Willow Creek. I'm not talking Willow Creek Road, I'm talking Willow Creek proper. These mains are susceptible to floods, and as the staff reports indicated, we have experienced flooding in the past that has compromised these pipes. The work to replace these mains will be accomplished through 2 contracts. The first contract will bring you today, and the second one will be in the coming months. So in order to realign the water mains, they first need to be isolated from the rest of the city system. The existing isolation valves are located too far upstream or too far downstream to perform this work without causing widespread water outages. So this contract will provide the isolation we need to keep our work to a limited area to minimize disruptions while the work is occurring. The isolation will be accomplished by freezing the water main and then installing valves. And this technology has been used in the city of Prescott before. I have with us today Donald Harden from Tapmaster to answer any questions you may have about the technology or the technique that's being used. Once the lines are isolated and equipped with valves, they'll be ready for the actual water main realignment work to begin. That realignment work is already designed and bid, as I mentioned, will be coming in the coming months. We'll be bidding it in the coming months, and that will come back to council for authorization. These water transmission mains are very critical to the city of Prescott. They carry a large portion of the water to our residents here in the city. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and as I mentioned, Donald's here to answer anything else.
Okay. Charlie?
Mayor, thanks. And Joel, I think you just explained it because there was a little bit of confusion here. This project is to install the valves so that we can later replace the transmission main.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh,
Just one.
Steve?
After the fact, again, I know some of those water transmission lines have been in for a while, some have not. But why afterthought, why did we have the separation so far apart? Was it just hindsight's 20/20 at that point when we put those things in? Just curious.
Yeah, I can't answer some of those questions. I can't tell you, we do have a valve that's located nearby, but it is broken. It's disrepair. We don't have the ability to operate it, to open and close it. So there actually is a valve in the area that could help us with this project. We put our collective heads together, tried to figure out a better way to get this done. There just isn't a better way to do it.
Is there a way to find other backup valves in the system so that we don't have, I mean, that's a tough deal. When you're putting those kind of mains in a creek bed, it take a lot of work to get to them, number one. Are we going to try to engineer something in there that would be a backup scenario, or is that even possible?
Backup for the valves or
Yeah.
backup for the water main?
Yeah, adding in another valve.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing. Once the main is isolated, we'll be putting 2 brand-new valves in.
Okay.
So that we now have the ability to isolate it on either side of the creek. Answering the question, we're talking about 14 and 18-inch pipelines here. Valves for 14 and 18-inch pipelines can tend to get expensive, and we're talking about doing miles upon miles of projects. That adds to the project cost. So that's the only reason I can really give you as to why there aren't more valves out in the system.
I can understand that. Has the technology changed on those valves over the years so that they're better served not to rust because they have water and debris going through them? I mean, are they more sophisticated today than they were, let's say, 20 years ago?
Well, I think that, yeah, there's always increase, if you will, or advancements in technology. But the other aspect of this is maintenance management. Through our maintenance management system, when we have large valves like this, one of the standard activities is to exercise those valves at intervals so that you don't come back 20 years later, find you need to isolate that line and the valve is broken. Okay. Water valves need to be exercised. That is an example of basic maintenance management.
Thank you for that explanation. It makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Anyone else? Public? Do we have a motion?
Mayor, move to award the bid and contract for water line stops and 14-inch water line valve installations to Arizona Tapmasters, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $92,780, city contract number 2015-053.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote,
coming
please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, here's the biggie, item E.
Item 2E, review of the rate study for city water and wastewater utilities, adoption of a notice of intention to adjust water and wastewater rates, setting of a public hearing for 3 p.m. November 18, 2014, and release of the public report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you'll notice, I've pulled up on the board the actual calendar of the events, and as we all remember, last week we had a presentation by Raf Tellis, our consultant, who was putting together the rate study for us. The next item, the 14th, is what we're doing today, and today all the council action is doing is adopting the notice of intent. The council is adopting a notice to the public that we do have an intention to study or to look at rates and take action. We're setting the public hearing for the 18th of November at 3 o'clock, and we're also releasing the public report. And the public report I've distributed to council. It's a 212-page report from Raf Tellis that we finalized this week after last week's presentation. And if council does move forward with action today, it will be put out on the website as well as available at City Hall for anybody who wants to come down and look at a physical copy of it. Also, this calendar has changed since last week. Just to go over some of the other dates that are there, we have a meeting on the 28th, a public meeting. That's an evening meeting we're putting together so that people who can't make it to our council meetings will have an opportunity to come and see a presentation on it. We're having a council workshop on the 4th about this again. Raf Tellis will be present for that workshop.
Yeah. And it would, Mayor and Council, it would be our recommendation that the workshop, which has been added for November 4th, be a public workshop, that the public be invited to express their opinions. That would be our recommendation.
And then another evening meeting on November 6th at 6 o'clock again for the people who couldn't make any of these other meetings. And then we'll have the official or the required Arizona State statute has the requirement for the public hearing. That will be on the 18th. And then after that, those 4 additional meetings to discuss this, council will consider an ordinance on December 2nd. Over the last week, as we were finalizing the report, which you have in front of you, there were a few things that have changed since the presentation last week. I have, as part of the information you received today, the new presentation that has some updated slides in it. My thought was just to cover the things that have changed since last week, as opposed to stepping through the whole 40-slide presentation, just to cover some of the changes and talk about those today. And again, we will have the full presentation done 4 more times between now and council consideration as we hit these other public meetings. So with that, we can just start looking at the changes. On slide 8 in your packet, this slide has changed from last week in that as we were going through the data and finalizing the report, we found some issues related to the fund balance and how the coding of accounts. So you'll notice down at the bottom, if you compared the two, the fund balance numbers have changed and the debt coverage ratios have changed a little bit. Nothing significant, but there have been other changes related to this further cleansing of the data that we will look at.
So, Mark, just as an example, if I go back to last week's, the operations sub-fund reserve percentages, as an example, are now in line.
Yes, they have changed. They're more in line. They are in line with the public report, which we're asking council to release today.
Okay, thank you.
On the rate structure itself, this cleansing of data has changed some of the rates minimally, we'll say. This is slide 15 in your packet, which corresponds to the slide 15 from last week. Most of the rates per the tiers are the same. There has been some changes related to the non-residential rates, some minor changes. There actually went down 13 cents per thousand. Again, pretty minor, 13 cents to 58 cents depending on the tier. And again, that's related to the cleaning of the data for the final report. Also, alternative to the same way non-residential rates for the tiers have been adjusted in alternative to 19 cents at the tier 1 and 85 cents at tier 4, and the other two are in the middle. Next slide, get me to the right slide. Aquifer protection fee, we talked about the aquifer protection fee last week. We had the 70 cents that incremented for the different meter size. What we didn't have on that slide, which is in the final report, is to increase those each of the years as we do with the rate study. So those will increment as do the rates each year.
Martin?
Yes, sir.
In 2020, will they be 74 cents still or 75 cents?
Well, the rate study that we're bringing forward looks at a 5-year period, and we're only asking council to consider really the next 3 years, and we would be doing a new study in 17-18 that would be for the next 5-year period.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, in the previous rate study that was done, it did have 5 years of rates indicated, but at that time, the council decided, and I think prudently, that it's good to have that 5-year view, but a lot of things can change in 3 years. So the rates that were actually adopted were the first 3 years of that 5-year view, and that's the recommendation again.
The next change has to do with our surcharges for outside city in Chino Valley. Came to our attention from Water Resources that there is a contractual limit in the CVID agreement to the 30% markup on CVID customers, which are mostly our Chino customers, are a big part of them. So we changed the recommendation to leave that at the 30% markup and not move it to the 34%. Relatively minimal for the overall revenue projections of the rate study. Also, with the cleaning of the data and the proper classifications that we went over this last week, the outside city surcharge went from 39 to 40%. Prior, it went down slightly. Now it's going up slightly. None of these are really very far off. It's just more of a tuning, like with the cost of services. We're just readjusting the plan, which you need to do as you go down the road.
Mark, may I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
When you say outside city, does that include all of the areas that are connected to the city sewer system, not within the city limits, like the unsewered areas?
This is the water. This is only the water charges, not the sewer charges. There's no surcharge for sewer outside the city. This is just water.
Right.
It's all water outside the city limits, except for the Yavapai tribe.
Okay.
They're in city rates.
Okay.
What percentage of our water goes outside the city? Do you know offhand? I know that's a tough question to just toss out there, but
Yeah, I don't know offhand.
Okay.
It's not that significant, though. It's relatively small. Okay. 24, this is the same as with the water fund, slide 24, dealing with the wastewater fund. There were some significant discrepancies on the slide last week, so this slide is much more accurate in relation to the fund balance and the moving forward fund balance. So this is the correct slide. And again, this is as we finalized the report and we tied it together, we wanted to make sure the presentation was accurate to the report. Also, last week on slide 30, you'll recall we had a discrepancy on water usage under the first non-residential area, non-residential account, I'm sorry, at the 2-inch meter. That has been corrected now on slide 30. And also the non-residential fee rates here have been changed for the 13 cent and so on change in the tiers. So that, as you can see, we're looking like before at a 6.8% increase in residential at a 5,000 and water and 5,000 wastewater, with an 8% on non-residential for the 2-inch meter and a comparable 6.7 on the larger 4-inch meter. And we also added an additional slide. Last week, we only had a 5,000 gallon water account, water and wastewater comparison to other cities on slide 31. We added inserted another slide, it's now 32, for 10,000 water and 5,000 wastewater, just to give the comparison. Council mentioned that would be something I'd like to see. And again, that's essentially the changes in the slides. Again, the calendar has changed also. I'll bring that up again because it is important. And with council's action today, we will post this on the web. We'll post it at the utility window and make sure that the public is well aware of the scheduled public meetings so that they can participate in the process. Today, again, we're just releasing this large report so that the public can start looking at the study. We will also be releasing the full PowerPoint from last week as corrected that we discussed today onto the website, and again, available at City Hall. And it will set the meetings that are needed. With that, I'd be glad to answer any specific.
I don't have a question, just a comment. Thank you, Mark, for just showing us the changes this week.
Council.
Mark, how are you guys planning on making the public aware of the public meetings?
We will be posting it on our drive-through window and our front window. We'll be working with the public relations person here to get it press release out. We'll also have it on our website. We have a web page with this, looks a lot like this calendar page you see here. That'll be hot linked on our quick links on our item on our front page.
All right.
And we also have started noticing the public hearing in the utility bill, just so people will see it in their bill as well.
Great, thank you.
But we had to start that already before council action because of the cycle of bills. Otherwise, some people wouldn't get it till they were over.
Yeah, I think Councilman Lozelle brought this up last time, and it would be nice to see if we had the average bill for the person in the city of Prescott, and to see what changes that would look like on their bill going forward for the next 3 years.
I do have one that we could look at if you would like to look at one tonight, just briefly, for Councilman Lozelle's sake.
Does that mean we'll have to start at the beginning of the presentation?
Yeah, we'll start over reading the report. See if I can get this bigger here. This is a inside city bill of an anonymous individual. The bill, the black, of course, is their bill, exactly how it went out this last week. The red numbers will be the numbers that will change with the new rate study if it goes into effect in January. So this person had a $99.51 bill. Obviously, the items that are not over in red are not changing. The streetlight fee, the sanitation fee, the landfill closure, those are all staying the same. Their bill will go up $4.97 to $104.
Plus the aquifer protection.
And the aquifer protection fee is included in the water charge, and we will add a footnote. We will work with the bill printers to renumber our footnotes to, of course, get them in order. But for this presentation, I did it 6, and we'll just have an outline of it.
Mark, that 6,090 gallons, is that into another tier, or is that within the first tier?
3,000 is our first tier. What are the tiers? Let me pull my tiers. It's 3,000, and then the next 7,000. So they are, they are essentially 3,090 gallons
They're in the
into
second
tier
tier,
2.
yeah.
First 3,000 is tier 1, and then 3,090 in the second tier. And that's one of our higher bills. My account is below 5,000, and that's about our average. Our average residential household is about 4,900 gallons.
Okay.
And this is after the first year?
This is the January of 15 rate increase.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Gene.
Thank you, Mayor. After the meeting, I had emailed a number of questions to the consultant, and I got a written response today. I don't want to go through the whole thing right now, but I'm hoping that in the public hearings, the consultant will be there to address some of these issues.
The consultant will be here on the 4th and the 18th for the meetings. He'll be at council. The evening meetings we will be doing, but we will be including comments that we receive from the public and your comments as part of the presentation, just to discuss those.
Okay, great. And I'm looking forward to hearing from members of the public about how they feel about increasing water rates and whether or not they feel that it's justified based on the information we're presenting. And one thing I think would be helpful, as we've talked about, Joel, is some pictures to show the condition of some of our lines and why we really need to get on this quickly. And then, just as a general principle, I'm very much in favor of encouraging more conservation and taking another look at some of the higher tiers to see if we can increase those rates in order to encourage conservation. And I trust the consultants, and I know they're trying to balance the revenue stability with the rates and the conservation concept, but I want to know if we can go a little further with encouraging conservation.
Yes, we'll work with the consultants.
Mayor, thank you. Mark, could you put the bill back up for just a second? Granted, anybody who receives a utility bill from the city should know this, but I think it's just important to note that included in that 104.48 or the 99.51, there are other services that are being paid for, such as trash collection, the landfill, things of that nature. I don't want someone to walk away thinking that total amount due is just for water and sewer.
Excellent point, Councilman. In a lot of cities, Prescott Valley, your sanitation charges are not on there. You have Patriot or something doing your sanitation with a separate bill. And also, we also have it, so we might as well throw it up here. We also did a commercial account bill comparison. This is a restaurant. And again, their bill obviously goes up more, $22.88, but as a percentage, it's comparable to what we showed. Go from...
Thank you. And then my last comment, and just for the public who can't see in the audience, I just want to acknowledge the representatives from CWAG who are here. My understanding is that they'll be looking at this as well, and I expect that we will hear some comments as we progress through, and they're going to be a key part of our ongoing conservation program into the future. So thank you for being here and having an interest.
Mark, on the aquifer protection bill, I just have a couple of comments on it. And to address your question, Greg, when this discussion came about, there was not a number we were trying to justify. It was to start a process of recognizing that at some point in the future we were going to have some type of a funding mechanism. So this initial 70 cents was, for better words, it pulled out of the air, but at least it was a start to a funding process so that we could start developing money that could be used for these needs. So, which brings up, can we identify the amount of the aquifer protection fee on this bill? Because there's no way for the customer to know that it's 70 cents.
Our bill is significantly, or getting long. I mean, a residential bill, which we have up here, is one of our shorter bills.
Yeah,
Some of our commercial bills have additional lines for additional dumpsters and other things, and the bill, comes down. We could try to separate it if it's council's desire to have it as a separate line. Again, that adds confusion to the bill. It starts making it look like a cell phone bill.
So you can see the top of it, Mark?
The top of it is the stub that is detached right at this line here above the City of Prescott to be returned.
If you could squeeze it in the footnote, that would probably suffice.
We could probably do it similar to what we do with the winter consumption or winter average for the wastewater. we could work on putting it in the footnote if that would suffice. Again, trying to make the balance of getting enough information but not making it look like your cell phone bill.
Yeah. Well, since it's a new charge, there's going to be a lot of questions.
Yes, there
Just
is.
the fact that you're saying that this is something they hadn't seen before, there's going to be a lot of questions, and we're going to need to justify and identify how much it is with the customer, I think.
And Mayor, obviously your recount of the history is accurate, that there was an extended dialogue about unsewered areas during which time the aquifer protection fee was identified.
That's right.
But I think since then, we do have some information where we have an order of magnitude here with the pending total maximum daily load, or TMDL, draft that ADQ has issued, and someday they're going to require the city to meet in terms of water quality in Watson and Willow Lakes. But that's not the end of it. The next step is that there is also a draft ADQ for a small community MS4 permit, which is surface water runoff. And ADQ, and I will tell you this, and we haven't had the chance to brief the council on this because I've just learned what some of the details are within the last day, but ADQ is proposing as an agency that the state of Arizona require surface water quality, and now we're talking about storm drains, turbidity and things like that, that water quality exceed federal standards. And as an order of magnitude, where we were just talking about with Public Works folks yesterday, we could be talking about another $500,000 a year, just to throw a number out, in addition to the Watson and Willow Lake water quality. So we've got some pretty substantial discussions coming up about unfunded mandates and water quality, and what are the outcomes that state and federal governments are really want to achieve, because as we know, for example, that when we recharge from Watson and Willow Lakes, we meet the water quality for aquifer recharge. And also the water which is flowing down the creek past the lakes is not violating any standards. Yet we're being held by federal and state authorities, or will be held, to fix things without really a connection to what the outcome is going to be. If it's an aesthetic thing, then usually that's a policy decision. I'm saying this to illustrate that what we're calling the aquifer protection fee is going to be a subject of fairly intense discussion over the next couple of years in this community.
So what you're saying, that may be the funding source to accomplish other
right,
challenges.
and to give an order of magnitude here, you recall from one of the other slides here that aquifer protection fee of 70 cents plus the scaled up for water meter size, that would generate an estimated $250,000. We could find ourselves 5 years down the line here where we need 3 times that.
Well, I think for once that we're getting ahead of the 8 ball on this one, and unfortunately we're combating state and feds, but it is what it is, and we've seen it before, and we've been caught with our pants down in the past, so I'm glad we're at least got some foresight going.
I think we have to stay strong, though, in the fact that I remember a day when they told the city of Prescott we couldn't discharge our treated effluent into Granite Creek, and then after we did a lot of revamping and redoing, they came back and said, well, we just really didn't mean it that way after we spent all the money. So we need to make sure what they're telling us is in fact
legal,
the law and legal, before we jump off the bridge and not have any water underneath it to catch our
But it's
body
nice to have some cushion when that hammer does drop, possibly. So.
I would agree, but I think that we're doing the right thing by putting this in place, and very honestly, it should have been put in place 5 years ago.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. McConnell, thank you for publicly acknowledging the fact that the TLMD study that the state did was very specific with regards to the Water Quality Act of whatever it was back in 1978, I think. I can't remember, 88, 78.
That was the Ethiopian Water Act.
Yeah, I understand. But the water out of our watershed meets or exceeds the standard of that particular act when it dumps into the Verde River. And that's a very important thing to understand. The problem with regards to what's sitting in the reservoirs that are here in Prescott, that being Willow and Watson, they also acknowledge that it's not the citizens of Prescott. It's the Forest Service, it's the controlled burns, it's ADOT, it's all the various, the mining people that issue mines. It's all kinds of things that are going on out there. And it's not just citizens of Prescott. But nobody in that study identified a mechanism in place to resolve that issue. And yet we may be held accountable for something the citizens here never did.
Comments from the public? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Do I have to say who I am and all that? Leslie Hoy, 1880 Coyote Road. I'm not here to comment on the water quality issues. I assume this is the comments about the rate calendar and that. Okay. I just have two small things that I would like to see, which are that the rate increases should incentivize conservation by the higher volume users and not fall on the lowest tiers of the people who are already trying hard. And also, we'd like to see that the commercial users should pay the same or higher rates as the residential users. And we'd like to see a conservation program put in place at some point for the commercial users. And that's not to say that a lot of commercial users aren't already doing conservation on their own, because I'm sure that they are. Then I have a couple questions. When will the utility rate calendar be on the website?
Tomorrow morning.
All righty. And will it have its own URL? Because right now, the way the council agendas are, that there's not a URL just for the agenda item. So like when we're trying to tell each other, oh, you should look at this item or that item, it's hard to find them. So is it possible to put it up there with its own URL?
Yes. It will have a link on the highlights, which is on the right-hand side of our website. There's 5 or 6 highlights.
Okay.
There'll be a link there.
Okay.
Dedicated web, and that'll take you to a dedicated web page that'll look like this calendar, but
Okay.
have the documents.
And we'll be putting all these dates on our calendars too. Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Leslie, before you run off, I'd like to share a question with you
Okay.
on conservation. We talk a lot about it, and where our cost of production of water and bringing it to town, we have not seen any decrease paralleling the lesser use of water. So conservation, on the one hand, is producing less income for the city, but our costs have not decreased, which in some ways is causing a rate increase because we have to balance that enterprise fund. What's your thought?
Okay, that's a complicated question, but I think that question comes up with regard to all natural resources. For instance, gas and electricity, those utilities also face those issues, and all over our country, people that are, communities that are providing resource services are facing that question. But you have to sort of look at the longer view of this, because if people conserve more, then that means we have to pump less. So eventually that should help reduce the cost of any kind of importation projects and the cost of electricity that is required for pumping. But we're well aware that that's an issue.
Yeah. Well,
did I answer that question?
And I think what I'm trying to say is that message, we need help of getting that message out, because we are looking at the long haul also, and the cost will probably not go down,
right,
because of the less usage,
right.
But inflation and other costs by themselves are kicking the costs up.
Well, and I guess at some point maybe the idea of having the water service be an enterprise, I forget what you call that, but it paying for itself, maybe at some point that isn't going to be possible in our future. It may have to be subsidized in some way. I mean, these are complicated questions. I would like to add, though, that we're finding that, for instance, we had a booth at Great Prescott Outdoors over the weekend. We're getting so much more interest in conserving from people and from people who are moving here and are expecting to conserve, and there's huge amounts of interest in rainwater harvesting. And we've also been discussing this with some realtors because we're working on developing conservation classes for realtors. And realtors are telling us that people that are looking at houses when they're coming from other places are very interested in conservation also. They're interested in rainwater harvesting, and they're interested in solar. So as we see that interest in the public, then, we can't say, well, don't conserve water because it isn't gonna pay for our, our water service. So this is something that we all have to work on together and try to find the solutions that fit.
Yeah. Well, I think we all agree that we can do a better job of getting the message out, and that's a key component of where we're trying to go.
Right, and it's a big challenge too, and of course we're working on it every second.
Well, thank you and Chris for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion. You remember what it was, Jim?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm going to do this in two motions, or is one okay? Okay. Mayor, I move to adopt the notice of intention to adjust rates, fees, and service charges, and to set a public hearing for 3:00 p.m. November 18, 2014, and number 3, release the public report.
Second.
Okay, and we probably ought to change the wording here and add the word "and" between the two, what might have been two motions. Okay? All right, okay. Okay, motion been made. Did we get a second?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Anything else before the council?
You're becoming an English instructor, aren't you?
Yeah. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.